Hello, welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya here from the porous Soonerscoop.com studios. Make sure you are subscribed and sharing everything that you can with the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. Week 3. Well, week 4.
Week 4.
I'm off my rocker.
Maybe we don't have synergy. We wore the same outfit today.
I thought that was going to be it. No, week 4. Oklahoma headed out on the road for the second time this season, coming off of it was an ass whooping on Saturday up in Tulsa, 6-17, your final up at H.A. Chapman Stadium. George, we did the instant reaction YouTube show. There was a lot to like. And I think that, moving forward, this is somewhat of a big test for Oklahoma. And Brent Venables said it today. It's a battle in the trenches.
Yeah, it's going to be a good test. I mean, it probably their biggest test so far when you talk about what all goes into it. I think SMU might be a better team than Cincinnati overall. They might have more wins at the end of the season, but going into a hostile environment, obviously what they went and played against at Tulsa, that was not that. So this is a big test, and like Brent said, battle in the trenches. This is a Cincinnati group that we'll get into a little bit later in the week.
Sure.
But definitely an impressive defensive line and a group that's been able to run the ball really well in offense too.
Sure, that's going to be rather interesting, and I think that as we move forward with what is to come with conference play, injuries have been on the mind of a lot of people. Brent Venables wrapped up his Tuesday week press conference on Tuesday. Actually, I'm off to a real banging start today. It's really kind of started to irritate me a little bit. But here's Brent Venables talking about injuries.
I wanted to ask you about some injuries, either guys that didn't play on Saturday or maybe got banged up. Savion Byrd, Josiah Wagner, R. Mason Thomas, Justin Harrington, and Reggie Pearson.
Yep. So hopeful for all those guys. We're still evaluating Harrington in particular, about what his options might be.
All right, that was kind of ominous as far as the Justin Harrington front goes. We've done a little bit of reporting on this on Soonerscoop.com, and needless to say, George, it's a knee injury. It's the left knee, which is, I guess, good news in that he tore his ACL in the right knee in 2020 upon his arrival to Norman. But long story short, I don't expect Justin Harrington to be available for a while.
Yeah, look, if he plays this season, then he chose not to have surgery, and that's kind of the situation that he's in right now. Is he's trying to decide, do I have a season-ending, surgery, or do I, try to play on whatever the injury actually is, and we won't get into details on that just yet, just because we don't know for sure exactly what it is. But it is a knee injury, and he's kind of trying to make that decision, and I'm sure it's a tough one for him. I mean, look, he's a guy that has had so many ups and downs in his career and has gone through injuries like this before. You feel for the kid, and he was playing such good football. It's tough, but on the positive side, Deshaun McCulloch's back this week. Brent talked about that on his coach's show Monday night. So that's good news, especially at that cheetah spot. They're going to get Deshaun back, and he's a guy that I think they have high hopes for, a guy that didn't get to play much, so far this year because of the ankle injury in the opener. But he's somebody they can have back. And then those other guys, I don't know, Eddie. Some of them I don't expect to play on Saturday. I know Reggie Pearson is somebody that got banged up in the Tulsa game.
Didn't practice Monday.
Yeah.
I think that's
and it's a neck, right? Neck injury.
It's a neck injury, and I think, George, it's one of those situations that if they really pushed it and he really had to play, maybe you throw him out there, but because of the depth at safety, I think that they feel pretty confident about that situation. Savion Byrd left the game on Saturday as well in Tulsa, and it hasn't been confirmed, but I think you can put 2 and 2 together with some of the other reports that are out there. He had a concussion.
Yeah, I think that, and I would be surprised if he played on Saturday as well. He's a guy that, again, if you have a concussion, and that's what we think it is, on the offensive line, it's going to be tough for him to, obviously come back and play. I would assume it's going to be Kaden Green or Troy Everett. We talked to Kaden Green. We'll get into Kaden Green in a little bit.
Sure.
And then the other two guys, Josiah Wagner, R. Mason Thomas. Josiah Wagner we haven't even seen all season, so I don't really know.
Which is wild, and we talked about that on the Eskridge Lexus postgame podcast, just in terms of, it was something Josh McQuestion pointed out on Twitter, that with all of the freshmen that had some buzz throughout preseason camp, the only guy that we really have truly not seen out on the field this year It's Josiah Wagner, who's had a shoulder injury and just got back, I think, cleared on Monday to practice. And I think that that's going to be a situation you slowly get him back into the swing of things.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, that's a deep corner room, and they've played so many different guys there. I mean, Kendall Dolby's coming on all of a sudden, which it's a homecoming for him this week.
Didn't even realize
I didn't
that he
either.
was from the state of Ohio.
So big game for him, and then they have a lot of depth there. But Gentry Williams has been kind of banged up here and there, so maybe they could use a Josiah Wagner.
A really weird situation with Gentry as well. The stinger thing, it seems like, has been bugging him for quite a while now. Yeah. It's like, can the guy just get healthy? Because when he was healthy and on the field on Saturday, he had the interception there in the first quarter. I thought he was really good.
Yeah, no, he's been playing great when he's healthy. So you hope that he can figure that out. I don't really know. Hand up, Eddie, I have not played football in like 7 or 8 years. So
I play on Sundays in a men's league.
Yeah, well,
quarterback.
You could tell us all.
Quarterback, no big deal.
But I don't really know how you overcome that. Is that something that you can adjust your play to? I don't really know. And then R. Mason Thomas, I think he was a situation on Saturday that if they really needed him, he probably could have played. I think he went through warmups. He was suited up. I think maybe he just re-aggravated it against SMU because remember he didn't play against Arkansas State because he had hurt it in fall camp. So that's another injury that's like, is that going to nag him all season? So hopefully some of those guys will be able to play. But like I said, biggest news, sucks for Justin Harrington. I think it'll be tough to see him this year, and if we do, I think it'll be in a limited capacity. But the good news is Deshaun McCulloch is back. And he's a guy that I think they believe can be a difference maker.
We talked about this last week on the YouTube show going into what was the Tulsa week. They need to get him out on the field at some point.
Yeah.
And I think that he's played literally a quarter of football at Oklahoma since arriving. And as the weeks go on, and as you get into conference play, Cincinnati this week, then Iowa State, and then the big one at the State Fair at Texas in a couple weeks, you just want to get at least some snaps underneath his belt.
Yeah, and that's why it's going to be really intriguing to see how they use him on Saturday against Cincinnati, because is he somebody that you just throw out there and he's the starter? Because on the depth chart, he would be the starter if Justin Harrington's out. Or is it a situation where, hey, Peyton Bowen's been playing really good football, and if Reggie Pearson can't go, maybe it's Keyshawn Lawrence at safety and Peyton Bowen's at Cheetah. I don't know. You also throw out Kip Lewis, got some snaps at Cheetah, and he's looked phenomenal every time he gets in the game. So I think it's one of those situations we're going to see him at Cincinnati. I just don't know if he's going to be the first Cheetah out there. I think he might be a situational type guy just to get him some snaps. But he's definitely going to play quite a bit just because, like you said, Eddie, they need to get him going before they do head down to Dallas here in a couple weeks.
In terms of one more tidbit on the safety position, with Reggie Pearson and the injury situation that's coming with him or that is currently ongoing with him, I'll tell you what, you hear more and more about Robert Spears-Jennings. And I think that, he flashed a year ago as a freshman. He started to work his way back from the shoulder injury that kept him out for most of the preseason. And since being cleared, I think he's been really good.
Yeah, no, he's super physical back there. You can tell he's comfortable in what they're asking him to do. I think he's a guy that can play a lot for OU going forward. And again, with the injuries going on right now, I think he's going to have that opportunity. I think he played close to 30 snaps this last week against Tulsa, so trying to get him going too. And again, I think you look back last year, they didn't have that depth at safety, so all of a sudden you're able to rotate guys through there. That's a luxury for Oklahoma, and it's going to, again, who knows what that rotation looks like. I think it would not surprise me if we see Peyton Bowen start at safety this week and somebody else starts at Cheetah. I'm not sure how they're going to mix it up. But, again, we're talking about a situation that a year ago, if a Deshaun White goes down or a Billy Bowman, which we saw Billy Bowman go down.
There was no depth. It
nobody.
It was a apocalyptic type situation when they had any type of injuries or when anybody went down. And, with that said, at the safety position, Keyshawn Lawrence has played well at times. And, Reggie Pearson's probably coming off of his worst game in a Sooner uniform. So all is well on the injury front, all things considered, outside of the Justin Harrington situation. And, you hope that Savion Byrd, we're going to get to the offensive line situation and what that is at left guard moving forward here in a little bit. First things first, though, Offensive Player of the Week in the Big 12, Dillon Gabriel, 28-31, 421 yards, 5 touchdowns on Saturday, George. And, it's a continuation from what we saw in the first 2 games of the season in Arkansas State and SMU.
Yeah, he's been spectacular, and I have the stats here in front of me. I mean, he's top in the country in a lot of spots. I mean, pass completion percentage, first in the country at 82.5%. pass efficiency rating, second in the country, points responsible for per game, second in the country, passing TDs, fourth, tied with Caleb Williams at USC. Everybody knows that name. Passing yards attempt, sixth in the country, passing yards per game, 11th, and total offense per game, 17th. So he's playing at a really high level. I know, I think it was it Jalil Farouk after the game said that he should be in the Heisman conversation. Jalil's very biased, but we'll pump the brakes on that. But if he keeps playing at this level, he will be at the end of the season. So he's just been super efficient, Eddie. I think that's been the biggest thing for him. He's been accurate with the football. He's been very decisive. I think you asked him yesterday after practice, are you just making better decisions? And I think that's what it boils down to is he knows where he wants to go with the football. He's seeing the game really well. I mean, the one interception he had, that's going to happen, right? He throws it up trying to make a play, trying to let Gavin Freeman make a play, and it gets picked off. But he's just been really good in terms of seeing the field, understanding things, and I think just running the offense and honestly being a leader. It seems like he's really embraced that leadership role for OU right now.
Well, let's hear from Oklahoma offense coordinator Jeff Lebby as well as Brent Venables and Dillon Gabriel after practice on Monday.
Again, I think he's in a comfort level right now that he wasn't in this time last year, and he spent a bunch of time in the building last year. He's spending a ton of time in the building right now, so that part of it hasn't changed. Again, he had to go through some things last year that were hard, and I think that's matured him in a way to have a really stern edge about him and how he's preparing and playing with the chip on his shoulder, and he's got to continue to do that.
Dillon, how do you quantify how much better you're playing this year versus a year ago at this time?
Wins. That's how I quantify it. Finding ways to win. Anyway, and then anyhow, wherever it is. So that's, my pure main focus. Obviously getting better in my work, detailed. And that has everything to do with, creating completions, moving the chains, and then putting points on the board. So simplifying it, that's the main thing.
I would expect so. Again, I've said this before, competition will should bring out the best in everyone if you're made of the right stuff. And, I don't think Dillon's ever felt, quote unquote, threatened, but certainly knows that the young guys watching him every day and is incredibly talented in his own right. So who doesn't want to show off their stuff, So I'm sure it's helped. And again, but at the same time, Dillon's, since I've known him, has not been a guy that's looking over his shoulder either. He's confident in his own skin and the process and what he needs to do to play at a high level. And I think that's helped him, as opposed to paralyze him. And there's some guys that, you got a handful of guys that they're worried about the external factors or things that they can't control. And it does stunt their growth, in my opinion. Keeps them from really realizing their potential.
When he got back in January and just the way he worked and through winter workouts, and that had not a lot to do with ball, but it had a lot to do with leadership and toughness and edge and knowing who he was and being true to himself. Seeing that was something that was eye-opening for me because, again, he's operating with a real edge right now, and he's got to continue to do so.
I'd say just a collection of a lot of things. I said it before, just the collection of year two guys being together, me being Jalil second year, Drake, Andrew obviously coming in, but being able as a group to come together as a unit, it's just different.
All that work that you guys did during the summer, it did come to fruition, that just the comfort of knowing where guys are going to be?
I believe so. I think, some of the throws we work and then seeing it, come to fruition in play and things we specifically worked, and then seeing that happen is something that is cool to see, but also a testament, to our work and how we do it.
It's my BFF right there, Dillon Gabriel. Best friends for life. On a serious note, the 90.3% school record on Saturday against Tulsa. He leads the country, as you said before we went to those audio clips. When does this become – we talked about this on the way home from practice yesterday. When does this start becoming real for you? Because I think there's a lot of people that look at the numbers out there and they go, yeah, he did it against Arkansas State. I know he did it against SMU, but what are they defensively? And, Tulsa's Tulsa, no offense. Don't block me again. I love my sunglasses. I'm getting them back. No big deal. When does it become real for you? When does this become tangible that Dillon Gabriel has taken that next step into what I think a lot of people thought was going to be the guy that they got from Central Florida a year ago.
I think there's two games, right? And I think one is this Saturday. I think he can take another step this Saturday. If he can go out and perform at the same level that he did this last week and and against SMU and Arkansas State, if he can do that against Cincinnati, which is going to come out and play good defense, that's another step in the right direction. And then I think it's Texas. And that's what I would say for this entire team is that Texas game. If they can get to 5-0, everyone expects them to get to that. Everyone expects Dillon Gabriel to play well against a Cincinnati and an Iowa State, two teams that are probably at best 7-5, 6-6 type teams, 8-4 maybe is their ceiling. He should play well against those teams. Oklahoma should beat those teams. They should be 5-0. But if they can go into Dallas and Dillon Gabriel can play at a really high level, then all of a sudden you're talking about a team that can go and win 11 games, go compete for a Big 12 championship. Dillon Gabriel can be in the quote-unquote Heisman conversation. Is he going to win it? I don't think so, but that's the game that I think everybody has circled. So he's been incredibly efficient. The offense has been really efficient in terms of what they're doing on third down. They also rank number 1 in the country in third down conversion rate, I think at 67%. So they've taken a huge leap, and I think a large part of that is the way that Dillon Gabriel's playing. He's playing within himself. He's making good decisions. He's pushing the ball down the field. He's been very aggressive in that. He's letting these guys, we've talked about it, they've got so many different guys at wide receiver that can make plays. He's letting those guys go make plays. So I think that's the biggest difference right now for the offense. But again, they were really good last year through 3 games. So it's going to be interesting to see, can they continue that? And I think that first big test is this Saturday.
You could read George's story on kind of where that thing is from 3-0 this year to 3-0 last year. It was something that you wrote about after the game up in Tulsa on Soonerscoop.com. For Dillon Gabriel to be very good, and what has allowed him to be very good, particularly in the passing game, it's been because of Oklahoma's offensive line. You can debate on what they're doing in the run game. From a pass protection standpoint, though, George, they've been very good.
They've only given up 1 sack. That's what you're looking for. And the 1 sack was a really good play. I mean, most people probably remember it. Savion Byrd just got beat against SMU. So they've been really good in pass pro. That's also, somewhat the running backs have been really good in pass pro as well so far this year. So they have been good up front when it comes to passing the ball. Now, running the football, Eddie, I think has been a little bit of a concern. They're still averaging, I think, around 4.6 yards per carry, which is, I think, ranked 51st in the country right now. So, it's a right around average. Whereas last year, I think they averaged almost close to 6 yards per carry. They were, I think, top 10 in the country a year ago in that category. So, the offensive line needs to figure it out in the run game. But in terms of protecting Dillon Gabriel, they've done an exceptional job so far.
I think anybody that listens to the Unofficial 40 podcast knows about the post-game phone calls I have with my dad, and he wasn't too happy with how Oklahoma was running the ball on Saturday. But you look up, and all of a sudden, they did average 4.2 a carry, which, it's not the best. It's not, I think, what Bill Beatenbow and Jeff Lebby would want, but they have been better in some phases. Walter Rouse had the holding call that brought back the Marcus Major big run, but Brent Venables was asked about the status of his offensive line through 3 games on Tuesday.
Offensive line has done a good job. We've one of the best in college football, keeping a quarterback clean, and have done a good job efficiently at rushing the football, and helping in the sometimes you got lots of runs called, but you got the RPO world, so you pull it out of the belly and you throw it down the field. So so you don't know whether or not they were any good or not, and. So they've done a nice job. Again, we lost 5 guys a year ago, and 3 starters, and so I think those guys have done a really nice job, and there's still room to continue to improve at every position on our football team. They're not excluded in that, but I like where we're at right now up front.
All right, so let's stay there, George. Offensive line talk. I know that it's become a talking point on this team, and that's what's happening at left guard. Savion Byrd, he's been up and down now with the concussion issue coming out of the Tulsa game. If he's not expected to go, I think the first body that was out there in replacement of Savion on Saturday was a interesting decision. Kaden Green, the true freshman that started at tackle, former 5-star guy. I guess it probably tells you a little bit about what they feel like the depth is at that situation.
Yeah.
And maybe even more so about where they feel like Savion Byrd is right now as a player.
I think it tells you 2 things. It tells you what they think of the depth they have there. obviously not good enough in terms of Troy Everett or whoever else, Caleb Schaefer at guard. And I think it also tells you how much trust they have in Kaden Green, because you look at Bill Bedenbaugh's history in offensive line, coaching the offensive line. It's very rare to see a true freshman get as much playing time as Kaden Green's about to get, because I do think we're going to see Kaden Green play quite a bit. I don't know if he'll start Saturday at left guard. He's definitely going to get some possessions, and it would not shock me if he ends up winning that job. And he's a guy that came in, everybody circled as the future at maybe left tackle, maybe right tackle. He's kind of played both. I think he played quite a bit of left tackle back in the spring when Walter Rouse wasn't fully healthy. So, and he's a big guy. 6'5", 316 pounds.
He's a monster of seeing him and Jacob Sexton next to each other out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the future of Oklahoma's offensive line, though.
Right, and I think he eventually will get back to tackle next year when he's expected to probably start for Oklahoma. He'll be at tackle. But this year, they pulled him in. He was telling us yesterday, Bill pulled him into his office Monday of last week and said, hey, we need you at left guard. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like it wasn't a like, hey, do you feel comfortable? It was, you're moving to left guard, and so he had to learn it on the fly. I thought he came in and played well. He's very physical. He's a guy that he's still learning that guard position. He told me that he had only played guard 3 times before in his life, and it was when he was a freshman at Lee Summit North in high school. So not too experienced. He's learning on the fly there, but as talented as he is, Eddie, I can't imagine he ends up, not winning that job, moving forward, especially if Savion's out for a while. We'll see, how long it takes everybody a little bit more time to come back from, concussion. And then Troy Everett, I think, is a nice player, but he's a center. At the end of the day, like, that's where he's supposed to be playing. So I think that kind of tells you where that left guard spot's at.
Here is Jeff Lebby as well as Kaden Green talking on Monday about the position change and kind of things moving forward at left guard.
Yeah. We're going to continue to roll some guys up front. We've got guys that deserve to play, and those guys have played, and they'll continue to. With what we're seeing out of Cincinnati is a front that's really good. They're big, they're long, they're physical, and the strength of their defense to me is that front. So it'll be a great challenge for us as we go on the road.
Yeah, I got thrown at left guard. Coach thought I can do it. And so I went to work. It's been a lot, but, I put a lot of time in the film room and off the field, so I'm starting to get the hang of it a little bit. And then guys like Savion and McCade and even Troy helping me out a lot. So,
how surprised were you when they told you, hey, you're going to go ahead and make the move?
Yeah, well, I got called in for a meeting with Coach B. I didn't really know what it was about. And then he told me Monday, and I was kind of like, oh, okay. And as soon as I left the meeting, I just got out of class, so I went straight to work.
Incredible big-bodied guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it is going to be interesting considering, you're going up against a Cincinnati defensive line group that I think we all kind of agree is top 2 of what Oklahoma's going to see. You could debate between Cincinnati and Texas. I might lean towards Texas, but the Dante Corleone kid, if that's a name that you are not familiar with, you need to familiarize yourself with, because he is going to be a guy in the middle of Cincinnati's defense that could cause some trouble on Saturday.
I think they have 11 sacks. Is that right? That they've totaled this year. So they're one of the better groups in the country. So they're going to get after Dillon Gabriel, and it's going to come down to, can they protect? And I think when we talk about the entire offensive line, it's you got to have a cohesive group. The best offensive lines that have come through Oklahoma, they were a cohesive group. And when you have one spot, even if it's just the left guard spot, that it's continuing to be a rotating door, that's an issue. But I will say, we've also seen groups not come together till about the Texas game. And so maybe if they can gel together, here going forward, then things will work out. But I do think it's going to take some time to figure out who exactly is going to be that left guard. And, Kaden Green, we said it. Physically, he's as talented as they come. I think that there's no question about it. He's ready to play as a true freshman physically. It's just the mental side. What does that look like, learning, a new position on the fly like he is? He seems like a smart kid. I'm sure he'll figure it out, but don't be surprised he's going to have some mental mistakes here and there when he's in there on Saturday.
It's a lot to be asked of true freshmen, to be playing multiple positions, and you see that now with Kaden Green, who moves from tackle inside to guard. You see that with Peyton Bowen, who mentioned at the beginning of August or midway through preseason camp that he was playing multiple positions. Brent Venables talked about kind of what it takes for a true freshman to be asked of those duties on Tuesday.
Sort of going back to freshmen, Kaden Green, Peyton Bowen, they're both playing multiple positions. How tough is it to recognize which true freshman can handle something like that? Is that something you can see in recruiting, or you have to wait till they get on campus?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. You have your instincts in the recruiting process on what that'll look like, and then once you have them, you quickly find out, how they learn, how they respond, how they compete, how they play, all those things. And so I think it's a combination of both of those things, and both of them have. It's not a surprise to us that they have the capability of doing multiple things, at such an early age. But in a perfect world, you zero them in on a position and let them, go get it. Sometimes you can afford that, sometimes you can't.
Talking about two really exceptional players in terms of what they're being asked to do, as well as just kind of the overall grasping of being freshmen on a college football team and having big roles. So I think that at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons why you go recruit 5-star guys, because athletically they got it. It's just about getting a grasp on it. And we talked about this yesterday after practice, after talking with Peyton Bowen, which you can see that interview up on Sooner Scoop's editorial YouTube page. He just gets it. Like, he carries himself like he is a junior in college already.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds like a veteran out there, like he's played a lot of college football, and you know that he hasn't. That's the crazy part, is it just comes naturally to him. I mean, his football IQ is off the charts, and I spoke to him a little bit one-on-one after practice yesterday, and I was like, where do you get that from? And he's like, honestly, I don't know, I was like, that's even more impressive, because usually when a kid like that, it's like, oh, my dad, played college football for a long time, or was in the NFL, or whatever it may be. Peyton, his dad did play football, but not at this level. So for him to just have that naturally says a lot about him, and just his work ethic too. I think he's somebody that loves watching film and things like that. And then he's just incredibly athletically gifted. So great to see him play. I mean, PJ Atabara is another true freshman. I think his
starting
snaps,
to flash a little bit, man.
I think he's a guy that we're going to look up at the end of the season, and he's going to be playing a lot of football for this team. So you just got a lot of young guys. I mean, we could even mention Jackson Arnold's playing quite a bit.
Sure.
I mean, the Arnold package isn't working, and I'm sure we'll get into that, on the unofficial 40 later this week. But, he's another guy that they've kind of thrown into the fire. So they've got a handful of true freshmen. That kind of goes back to this overcompensating thing about this team, is that's why you feel good about it. They just have more playmakers out there than they did a year ago, and just more depth and young guys that are, feel comfortable making plays.
There is a certain level of confidence. There's a certain level of, if you want to call it culture building. I know Brent was talking about it a little bit in his press conference on Tuesday. It seems different. We'll see, though. And I think that you wrote about it on Sunday, just in terms of how's this 3-0 different from this 3-0 a year ago. And we begin to kind of answer those questions coming up on Saturday. We'll have the preview show on Thursday with Cincinnati. Big trip. I think that's only the second time I've been up to the state of Ohio. Don't know if we're going to get by Skyline Chili. But here is the kind of the question. And I think that it's interesting to look at in terms of how these things are so much different than this year to last year. And it does seem like it feels different, but you got to get through this Cincinnati game. And I think that, I don't want to concern people, but at the same time, because they're coming off of a loss, because it's the first Big 12 game in Cincinnati school history, there is going to be a certain level of vibe that comes with Nippert Stadium on Saturday. And I think that one of the things that you point to in terms of this year to last year, they were in this position a year ago, and Kansas State came in coming off of a loss to Tulane. Now you get Cincinnati, and you have to go into their house and do it.
Yeah, and I think the players know that, and I think, listening to Brent today, he's focused. There's no doubt about it. He's taking Cincinnati very seriously. I think we kind of said the same thing when he talked about SMU a couple weeks ago. The tone was just a little bit different today than what it normally is. And you listened to the players last night, and we'll talk to some more tonight. But I even heard about Danny Stutzman talking to the team about last year's 3-0 versus this year's 3-0, and not letting what happened last year happen this year. So I think everybody expects them to go out and again, win this week, win next week, and then head to Texas for the biggest test. But Everybody's kind of looking ahead. I don't think Oklahoma, it certainly doesn't sound like Oklahoma is looking ahead or looking past Cincinnati this week.
And I don't want to have to put it like this, and it might come across kind of negatively, but they're just not good enough yet. They're not good enough to look across any or look over any team. And, I think that you saw that a year ago. This is a lot of the same players, even though there's a lot different about it. I think you out there watching know that. This is the same team that lost to Tech and lost to Morgantown and lost all those games that compiled up into what was a 6-7 record a year ago. So for George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We will see you on Thursday for the Cincinnati opponent preview.